Okay, welcome to What Baby Boomers Need to Know About Their Retirement Income. My name is Bill Romeo, and that beautiful lady you see on that screen is my wife, Maria. And we both work at the Everest Retirement Planners office in Matthews, North Carolina, home of the Tenzing Formula. Well, what's the Tenzing Formula, you say? Well, there it is. The Tenzing Formula is our way of trying to capture all the different aspects of your retirement as your needs unfold and situations arise. And today we're going to be focusing on over there at the 2 o'clock spot, Social Security maximization. This seems to be a big question lately with folks wondering if the system's going broke, when should I take Social Security, et cetera, et cetera. But as we always say, planning should not be done in a vacuum. You can see there's many different assets to good retirement planning. Social Security is just one of many. Okay, let's get with the program. We're going to give you guys a little brain teaser to start, and we need you to think a little bit before we dive right in. So if you haven't thought about these two questions, take a second and read them and answer them to yourself. So, in life, would you rather be early or delayed and pay a penalty or get a bonus? And we'll be returning to these questions later. So, people are hurting their retirements by making some costly mistakes and decisions about Social Security. And this is the main challenge that we're going to try to solve today. Before we do that, I just want to address a couple of things about this presentation. First, you may be wondering why a financial planner like me is here to talk about a government program like Social Security. And it's a good question. Here's my answer. There's a big need for Social Security education. Boomers are very interested in the topic, as your own presence here confirms. And many uninformed people make damaging choices about when to claim Social Security. Poor decisions about claiming will make my job more difficult when I have to help clients develop a retirement plan that tries to correct for a lower than necessary Social Security benefit. So I want to make you two guarantees today. One, I'm trying to make people smarter about how to claim their Social Security, and I believe you will be better prepared to make a good decision after this presentation. And number two, I want to assure you that there is absolutely no selling in this presentation. This is purely an educational event. So now, in order to help you remember what we discussed, I'm going to offer you guys, if you want, you can reach out to me and I will provide you with a handout that covers the topics of the presentation today, and then you can refer to it later. And, everyone's claiming decision is unique and personal to their own circumstances. So I invite people then to talk to me on a complimentary basis to tell me about their particular Social Security benefits and their situation and their goals and objectives, and we can put together a customized Social Security planning report. Now, I do that for my clients, but if you're watching this and not a client of our firm, I'd be willing to offer that up for you. So let's save questions. So I'm not going to open this up for questions because I don't want people to listen to someone's question and me give an answer and think that it pertains to them. If you have any particular questions, please feel free to reach out to me after the program. So a few things to know about Social Security. We all have many claiming options. There's possibly up to 18,000 different ways to claim. I know you're going to say that's a large number, but when you do all the scenarios, there's up to 18,000 ways to claim, especially with single, divorced, married filing jointly, survivor benefits, etc. But we normally look at like the five most useful scenarios. And your decisions have really far reaching consequences. I mean, most decisions are irreversible after the first 12 months. So once you make that choice, you're kind of stuck with it unless you're within that 12-month window. And your choice can impact both spouses. We'll talk about that. And Social Security is not it's not a Ponzi scheme and it's not bankrupt. And we'll talk about that and hopefully ease some fears. And some of your friends and family probably have been helped by Social Security benefits that you know of. And at the same time, few of your friends have expertise on Social Security. So one thing I don't want you to do is go ahead and ask your neighbor, hey, how did you claim? When, when did you claim? Maybe I should do the same thing. No, talk to me because everyone's situation is unique. And from what we've been seeing is that baby boomers are concerned about will Social Security be there for me? And maybe not even baby boomers, maybe even the younger generation are saying, you know what, I don't think it's going to be for me. We're not going to plan that way. I've been seeing things on TV and it's making me think like it's going away. Let me talk to you a little bit about that system going broke, and we'll see if that's really true. You're going to want to know how much you can expect to receive. So before you retire, you got to do a budget, you got to line up all your income sources, and you got to know how much you expect to receive from each. And Social Security, because it's a relatively known quantity, represents like a foundation of that overall retirement plan. You're also going to probably ask yourself, when should you apply for Social Security? And you may have heard that applying early for your benefit will be lower than if you apply later. And is it worth missing out on all those extra checks, to have a higher benefit down the road? Or should I take it now and start putting the money in the bank? Okay. We're going to shed some light on those questions. And something your parents probably never asked is like, how do I maximize my benefits? I know growing up for me, my grandparents and my parents, they took it as soon as they were eligible. And that's just the way it was, like they retired. Back then, you got a pension. We don't have that much anymore. And you had the pension plus Social Security to take care of you in retirement. Now, today, we want to talk about the 5 ways that we can maximize our Social Security benefits. And simply by knowing the rules, we can make some smart decisions. Also, will Social Security be enough to live on in retirement? Probably not. It's going to make up about 40% of the average retiree's total monthly income. 40%. So where does the other 60% come from? Comes from your assets that you've saved. But by coordinating Social Security with the rest of your retirement income plan, you can pursue a comfortable, worry-free retirement. And I do have some people, they live on Social Security 100%, and it's perfectly fine. It really comes down to what your expenses are. Okay. So again, let's understand the value. People tend to minimize the value of Social Security. If they believe that they're not likely to get something back from the system at all, they think it's going to be a minimal amount and not enough to really count on. But Social Security really is far more valuable than most people realize. Some people are worried that Social Security won't be around when they retire. And this has led to a lot of misunderstandings and some irrational fears about the solvency of the Social Security system. But we're going to look now at what the Social Security trustees say. And every year they publish a comprehensive report showing the long-range outlook for Social Security. And it was designed as a pay-as-you-go system. And payroll taxes from current workers go into a trust fund that are immediately paid out to current retirees. And because baby boomers have been in their peak earning years, the trust fund has accumulated more than needed for current benefits. Right now, the trust fund holds about $2.56 trillion, which is invested in special issue treasuries. And as baby boomers start retiring, these trust fund assets will gradually be drawn down. Does anyone know what the OASDI stands for? That's the Old Age Senior Disability Insurance Trust Fund. And that is where your FICA taxes go into. All right, so look at this chart here. And what we're seeing is that if the Social Security program continues on its current path, we're going to see that costs, meaning the outlays, are going to exceed what's coming in. And there are enough reserves that the system is currently able to pay 100% of promised benefits until 2034. After that, if nothing is done to reform this system, income will be sufficient to cover just 81% of promised benefits. All right, now don't get too nervous now. Although the Social Security system is not in imminent danger, most people agree that the earlier that The earlier reforms are instituted, the less painful they will be for everyone. And here's just a few of the ideas that have been proposed there on Capitol Hill. So one is to increase the maximum earnings subject to Social Security tax, right? Why not? Currently, only $184,500 in earnings is subject to the 6.2% tax paid by you and your employer. So what if they raised that and started taxing folks who make $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 a year? We would bring more FICA tax into the system. Another reform proposal calls for raising the normal retirement age, and they've done that already. It used to be where full retirement age was 65, then they raised it to 66. And now for most folks in my demographic born after 1960, it's 67. So as people are living longer, it might make sense to raise the full retirement age, maybe by another year. Still, another reform proposal would change the benefit formula so that future increases would happen maybe at a slower pace. And this would affect benefits for all future retirees. And some are talking about changing the formula for cost of living adjustments. This would give retirees smaller benefits and smaller increases, I mean, going forward, although the changes are expected to be pretty minimal. Now, if you want to learn all about this, if this is your bailiwick, you can go to the American Academy of Actuaries at their website, actuary.org, and you can read up all about it. Now, if you also go to the Social Security website, I think they have a little calculator where you can help provide some fixes and see if you can fix the system and make that chart we saw on the other slide look better. But from what I understand, bottom line is that baby boomers benefits are not likely to be affected. So if you are receiving a benefit today, that benefit is going to remain unaffected for the rest of your life. Those that might get that haircut, that 81% of total benefit, are going to be anyone that starts claiming after 2034. So anyone who puts a claim in after 2034, if reforms don't change the system the way it is today, they can expect to get a haircut, meaning whatever their statement says, maybe they only are going to get 81% of that. Okay. So that's something to consider when doing future planning. So after thinking about, saying, hey, what's a clearer way to think about Social Security? We can say, well, here's our straightforward definition of what Social Security is. It's an inflation protected income that you can't outlive. Even after your death, your benefit could continue in the form of survivor benefits. And we'll see that down the road in the next few slides. So your premium that you pay into the system, or tax, is listed on your paycheck under FICA, and that stands for Federal Insurance Contribution Act. You and your employer have paid this premium with every paycheck, so you want to be smart about how and when to collect this earned benefit. And we're going to look at its various features. So let's look at the income that you could possibly get. Again, income that you can't outlive. If you are worried about running out of personal assets in your old age, don't fear. Social Security will be with you until you die. And of course, the longer you live, the more that you can extract out of the system. And if your benefit starts out, as you see here, at $2,000 per month and you live 10 or more years, you're going to get nearly $300,000 in lifetime benefits. And if you live 20 or more years, just do the math, right? You'll get nearly $600,000 in benefits. And if you live 30 or more years, which we're seeing more and more of, right? Thank you, medical science. We're living longer. You can get close to $1 million out of this system. And if you're married, do that times 2. And all of our assumptions here, by the way, are assuming a 2% cost of living adjustment, which is about average. And that's what we use to project future benefits for our clients. Now, the 2% cost of living adjustment, right? That little inflation adjustment means that your benefit might start out at $2,000 a month, but along the way, that monthly benefit increases. So in 10 years, that $2,000 a month check goes to about $2,400 a month. And in 20 years, the check goes to $2,900 a month. And in 30 years, the check grows to $3,600 a month. Now, there's no way of knowing what future COLAs are going to be, but 2% seems to be a reasonable estimate. So let's look at how much we can expect to receive from the system, right? When your Social Security benefit is calculated, it's based on how much you've earned over your working career and then adjusted for the age at which you start collecting. So here's very boring example of how this works. So if you're an engineer, you're going to want your nose stuck to the screen. You're going to like this, right? It's pretty complex, but you may or may not want to follow along. But here we go, real fast. Some people find this interesting. The general process goes like this. Social Security looks at your annual earnings over your lifetime and indexes them for inflation. And they take your highest 35 years of earnings in the formula. The index earnings are totaled and divided by 35 to come up with an average. And if you don't have 35 years of earnings, the missing years will be filled in with zeros. This has the effect of lowering Social Security benefits for people maybe who have taken time out of the workforce. You know, the stereotypical stay-at-home mom because they were there to raise children. However, they may be eligible for spousal benefits, and that's how that came in to help boost their own benefit down the road. And we're going to cover that in a moment. Next, a formula is applied to these average index monthly earnings to determine the primary insurance amount. And this is what you see on your statement at your full retirement age. So if your full retirement age is 66 or 67, you see that number. This is how they're getting to that number. And each year, cost of living adjustments are applied to your benefit along with your new earnings, right? Always taking your highest 35 to help you keep up with the cost of living. So this is how the benefit formula would work for someone who was born in 1964 and who earned the Social Security maximum every year since age 22. So they had the highest wage base subject to FICA. Okay. In this example, we're seeing that the average index monthly earnings come out to be about $14,358. And in calculating this primary insurance amount, the first $1,286 would be multiplied by 90%. That's what we see there in the first row. And then the amount between 1,286 and 7,749, that difference is 6,463. That gets multiplied by 32%. And then the amount over the 7,749, okay, that overage gets multiplied by 15%. And you can see how they're stacked up. And it shows a total primary insurance amount, or PIA, of $4,216.90. So right now, that is the largest check someone can get at their full retirement age if they had maximum earnings every year since age 22. So I can, it is kind of complicated. Very few people care about this, but that's what Social Security does to come up with your benefit. Now, it's nice to know how they calculate benefits, but I really want to know, Bill, why shouldn't I claim at 62 instead of delaying maybe till somewhere in between or maybe even 70? It's a good question, and it's also where some people start to get in trouble. That's because your monthly benefit will be reduced if you claim early. Anything before your full retirement age is a reduction in your benefit. And also you have taxes, right? So taxes could reduce that. And then you got Medicare premiums coming out of that Social Security check. So that check just boop, 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 keeps getting lower and lower. So what this means is that even when you maximize your claiming strategy, something that we're very happy to help you with, the amount you actually receive will be smaller in reality due to taxes and parts of your Medicare coverage. All right, this is a really good question, right? When should I apply for benefits? Well, the decision as to when to apply is one of the most important and one of the most complicated, and it can literally make a difference of thousands of dollars over your lifetime. It's also important to realize that the decision when to apply for Social Security depends on many factors that's unique to you and your situation. It includes your health status, your life expectancy, your need for income, whether or not you plan to work past a certain age, and if you are a surviving spouse or whether you have other personal resources. And the last part about survivor needs is interesting, and we'll get into that in a minute. And it factors into this next question. For most people, Social Security benefits alone will not be enough to live on throughout retirement. So let's take a closer look about how your claiming age will impact your benefits. So this chart here shows the full retirement age of someone born between 43 and 1954, right? Full retirement age is 66. And then as you get into 1955, 56, 57, 58, you can see the full retirement age increases by 2 months at a time until you get to 1960. And then you can see the full retirement age is 67. Now, remember that I said earlier, your primary insurance amount or PIA, that's the benefit you get at full retirement age. So what happens if you apply for Social Security before full retirement age? Well, your benefit is going to be reduced. So pick the column that applies to you. If your full retirement age is 66 or 67, look at that coordinating column, and you can see that you won't get the full 100% benefit if you apply early. You get a percentage. You get a little more percentage each year you delay up until your full retirement age on each column. So you can see at 66, it says 100%, right? At 67, it says 100%. So these amounts are prorated. You can apply anytime after 62, and your benefit will be reduced by the appropriate amount. Now, let's say you pull your check early and you come in and we do planning and you're like, oh my gosh, I think I should have waited. Well, you get a get out of jail free card, you only get one, and it's got to be used within 12 months of your initial claim. So if we wait 12 months and one day, you're stuck with whatever you got for the rest of your life. Okay. Now, on the other hand, if you want to wait, let's say you're working and everything's hunky dory and hey, or I have enough other income, or maybe one spouse is working, and you said, I can delay. I think I have longevity. I want to wait. I want to get a bigger check. Each year that you wait past age 66, you're going to get an 8% what they call delayed retirement credit. It's guaranteed 8% per year up until age 70. I mean, that's better than what we can do in the market lately. So you can see like at age 68, you would get 116% of your full retirement benefit. And after age 70, though, you don't get any more delayed credits. So it doesn't pay to wait till after age 70 to apply for Social Security. Now, I'm guessing, we're probably not too interested in calculating by hand our average indexed monthly earnings, and that maybe PIA and the reductions in credits for early or late filing, or the annual COLAs that could raise your benefit in the future. But there are ways that you can easily find out approximately the amount of benefits you can expect to receive. And one way is to look at your Social Security statement. So if you haven't created an online account, we recommend you do so ASAP. And you go to www.ssa.gov or socialsecurity.gov/my account and set up that account. They'll answer a number of security questions, and it's really weird because they're going to ask you, like, where did you live in the last 5 years, and what of these 5 banks, which 2 banks are yours, and they have a lot of information on you, Big Brother, but that verifies that you're in, and once you're in, it's pretty secure, very secure, I should say. You can use the retirement estimator right there in the middle at the My Social Security account. This calculator will tap into your specific earning history after you enter your personal identifying information, including your birthday, Social Security, mother's maiden name, yada, yada, yada. And again, these sites are secure. And note that the annual statement and the retirement estimator do not factor in cost of living adjustments into your age 70 benefit. That means that your actual benefit might be higher than what they indicate online. But our calculators that we use in our projections and our tools do adjust for COLAs. So if you know your PIA, you can give it to me and we can help you project your future benefits with COLA. And that's what we'll do for you. Okay. Um, Feel free to browse around these sites and play with them, play with the calculators if you are so inclined. All right. So why delay benefits? It's obvious to delay benefits because, of course, it'll be higher. Now, a baby boomer or a person who has a primary insurance amount of $3,000 and a full retirement age of 67 would receive $2,100 per month if they applied at 62. You see that there, right? You see the $2,100 a month. So they're getting the reduction. But if we waited until 70, what are we getting? We're getting 37.20 per month. And the difference becomes even more dramatic if we multiply these amounts by the 2% annual cost of living adjustment. Um, so let's take a look. Well, actually, you can see there in the far right column, see the $4,359 amount there at age 70 in the far bottom right column, right? That's the impact of a cost of living adjustment on that benefit. And by looking at that divergence, you can see they start off at the same amount, $2,100 in each column, and then slowly, as they go down the row, you can see the right columns getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, on this slide, uh, you can see, if you want to receive your check as early as age 62, uh, that's okay. But if you're going to live a long time, you're going to be glad that maybe you waited. Because as you can see, the longer you live, the more income you will have by waiting until age 70 to apply. And by the way, I call this affectionately my pop-up slide because my grandfather lived to be 93 years old. And I remember he claimed at 62. And back then, I didn't know anything about Social Security. So as I got into the business, I started realizing, he claimed at 62. And as you age, what do you think? Or what expense do most people have that tends to increase over time? Well, that's healthcare, right? And healthcare costs. And you can see that as he got into his 90s, his benefit was around, let's just say, $3,600 in this example. And, when most of your money is going out the door due to healthcare expenses, that's taken a large part of your Social Security check. What you can see if you waited till full retirement age at 67 or maybe even 70, you can see just how much bigger his check would have been if he would have delayed just a little bit. And he could have had more money for those needs down the road. Okay, so now naturally, maybe you're wondering, how do I maximize my benefits? Let's look at a couple of strategies. So the first thing you can do while you still have time is to improve your earnings record. Check your annual statement to make sure your earnings record is accurate. Mistakes are rare, but because the earnings on file at Social Security were reported by employers when they submitted your Social Security taxes, mistakes can happen, especially for self-employed individuals whose earnings records are taken from tax returns. So everything's linked with the IRS. Social Security has that direct link. And if we find a mistake, we can fix it by going to the IRS and maybe pulling a copy of our tax return statement and submitting it to Social Security. Now, if you find out there wasn't a mistake, it's just, hey, there's a zero here because I wasn't working, or stay-at-home mom, or was laid off for a while, et cetera, et cetera. How can we improve our earnings record? Well, you can work a few more years. Because remember, they're going to take the highest 35 years. So every time you add a year, if there were zeros in the calculation, one of those zeros comes off. If you had several years of low earnings in your career, can you work a few more years now while you're in your peak earning years. So those low earning years can be replaced with higher earning ones. So even if you start receiving Social Security but continue to work, your earnings record will be updated. People ask me that all the time. I'm pulling my benefit, but I'm working. How does that work? Well, you'll see little increases. They're not huge, but you'll see still on top of the cost of living adjustment, your benefits will increase. Um, it's also important, now that I mentioned that if you start receiving Social Security benefits before reaching your full retirement age and you work, there could be some benefits withheld. That's called the earnings test. Social Security really doesn't want you to pull benefits before your full retirement age and work. So if you make too much money, they'll start withholding some of those benefits that they were giving you. And I say withholding, they're not going to keep it from you. They're just going to hold it back. And then when you officially hit your full retirement age, they'll calculate that money back into the calculation. It gets a little wonky. My biggest thing is to say, if you are working, let's not pull Social Security unless we really, really need it. Now, applying for benefits at the optimal time, well, that's the best way to maximize your personal Social Security benefit. The chief reason for delaying benefits is because it's going to result in a higher lifetime benefit for you and or your survivor. But there is no one size fit all answer to this question. The important thing is apply at the most optimal time for you. Now, did you know that Social Security benefits are taxable? Ugh, right? We all hate taxes, but let's look at maximizing your benefits by minimizing taxes. So while the earnings test really isn't a tax, it's a way in which the government, takes back or holds back some of your income. We're going to include it in this discussion, but it's different from true taxation of benefits, which we'll get to next. One important consideration in deciding when to apply for benefits is whether or not you plan to work. So if you apply before you turn full retirement age, now in 2026, $1 in benefits will be withheld for every $2 you earn over 24,480. Okay. And it's important to know again that this money is not truly taken away. Your benefit is adjusted upward when you eventually do turn full retirement age to make it as if you applied later. This just means that if some of your benefits are withheld due to the earnings test, your new benefit will be higher, as if you had started at 63, 64, 65 instead of 62. But don't let the annual earnings test discourage you from working. I mean, the more money you earn, the more money you will have. Social Security really does not penalize you for working. And again, I don't want to sound contradictory from earlier. They don't really penalize you, but they're going to withhold some, right? And once the adjustment is made, you'll end up with a higher benefit. I think it's just there to make you think twice about whether or not you should really take it. And of course, the earnings tests themselves will contribute to your financial well-being, right? To avoid the earnings test entirely, just wait until full retirement age or later to apply for benefits. Now on to the true tax on Social Security benefits. And this table that you see here shows the taxation of Social Security benefits based on various income levels. Now, income in this case means provisional income. That's the little asterisk there on the bottom in the, what do you call that, tan or yellow bar. Here's how it's calculated. It's going to take your adjusted gross income plus 1/2 of whatever Social Security benefits you're going to receive, plus any tax-exempt interest. That would be like municipal bonds, if you have them. Now, if your provisional income is between 32,000 and 44,000, up to 50% of a married couple's benefits are subject to tax at whatever your current federal income tax rate is. If provisional income is over 44,000, up to 85% of the benefits are subject to tax. Now, that's just federal tax. For us here in North Carolina and for a majority of the United States, there are no state income tax. There are a few states that do tax it for state income tax. I do not know them off the top of my head, but we can look them up for you if you're concerned. Um, the threshold for a single individual, as you see there, are $25,000 and $34,000. In the case of married filing separately and living with a spouse, up to 85% of Social Security is taxable, regardless of your income level. The important thing to remember here is that up to 85% of your Social Security benefits may be subject to tax. Another way to look at that is 15% of your Social Security benefits are tax-free. I don't know if that makes you feel any better. Maybe. Okay, you can minimize taxes on Social Security by lowering other income. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, this may sound good. It isn't the easiest thing to do, but if it applies in your situation, we can take advantage of it, right? So here we go. Investment income. If you do have municipal bond interest, just know that that gets added into that provisional income calculation. So maybe we start reducing the amount of municipal bond interest that we have as we get towards wanting to claim for Social Security. Anticipate that when you hit that famous age of 73, you're going to start having something called required minimum distributions, which can cause you to be in a higher tax bracket and may cause your Social Security benefits to be more taxable. Maybe we consider drawing down the IRAs at retirement up to age 73 to lower that amount, or convert the traditional IRA to a Roth IRA, which generates tax-free income. Again, something to consider. Delay claiming Social Security. That reduces the number of years that your benefits are subject to tax. So the longer you wait, the less tax you'll pay overall. And think about reducing your expenses, paying down debt, adopting a simpler lifestyle, which would never work with my mother. My father will tell you that outright. I think her lifestyle got more expensive in retirement. But anyway, I digress. This is why we like to model everything, put it into our retirement planning software, look at the tax impact, and see if there's ways that we can improve the situation. Remember, if you are 65 or older and enrolled in Medicare, that Part B monthly premium is going to be deducted from your Social Security check. And as you can see here, if you claim early, right, and that Part B comes out, it eats up a larger percentage of your benefit than if you wait till full retirement age or even later to claim Social Security. And this year's Part B premium is $202.90 per month, and only will go up every year. Imagine what it's going to be for folks in their 30s or 40s, what that age 65 Medicare Part B premium might be. Whew. Crazy to think. But anyway, when to apply. Now, this question is complex and really requires a customized analysis, but here's a few points to remember. If you apply early, I think you all know this now, right? Your benefit starts out at some fraction of your full retirement age or primary insurance amount, right? 75% or 80% or whatever. And it remains at that percentage for the rest of your life, as long as you pull that benefit for more than 12 months, right? 12 months and one day, you get stuck with that. It does not go up to 100% when you finally reach 67. It stays that way. Now, cost of living adjustments will magnify the impact of either the early or delayed claiming, because the annual cost of living adjustment is applied to either amount, the lower or the higher amount. And that causes the disparity really to increase over each passing year. And your benefits may be taxed and reduced by Medicare premiums. Don't let the earnings test discourage you from working. It's out. It can help many people who do need the money or some portion of their Social Security benefit before it's finally all calculated in when they hit full retirement age. And finally, delaying benefits may give the surviving spouse more income. You can look at Social Security planning like life insurance planning. So the longer you delay, the bigger the benefit. And then when the one spouse passes, let's say the higher earning spouse passes, the lower earning spouse gets their check replaced with the higher earning spouse's check. So the more that higher earning spouse delays, the better they're teeing it up for that lower earning spouse when they pass. But Bill, I'm not going to live long, so why shouldn't I just claim my benefit while I can? And the typical answer to this question is for couples, you should always try to maximize the higher earning benefit to protect that surviving spouse who will step into that benefit after the higher earner dies. Higher earning spouses are therefore encouraged to delay benefits as long as they can, particularly to age 70, because that's going to give their spouses the highest benefit after they die. And what that also does is helps minimize the amount of assets we may need to pull from the investments if we have a negative cash flow situation, right? Social Security's coming in, our expenses are here, and we need to pull the difference from savings. If we can maximize that check from the higher earning spouse, that's less the surviving spouse needs to pull from their savings. Anyway, let's look at how spousal benefits work. So Social Security was instituted in an earlier era when most married women did not work. And to give women a measure of financial security in their older age, the program offered something called spousal benefits. And it's important to note that spousal benefits apply to either gender, including same-sex spouses. The spousal benefit is 50% of the worker's primary insurance amount if that person applies for it at their full retirement age. So in this example, we have John and Jane. John's primary insurance amount is $2,000 a month, and Jane has a PIA of $800 a month. If Jane applies for Social Security at her full retirement age, her benefit would be 50% of John, or $1,000. And this is $200 more than what her own benefit would be. Okay, you all got that? Okay, now here's the basic rule. The primary worker must have already filed for benefits. Their record has to be open in order for the lower earning spouse to apply against it. And that lower earning spouse has to be at least 62 years old. Now, if they file at 62 years old, they're not going to get one half. They're going to get a reduction, right? Because they're filing early. If they file at full retirement age, they will get 50%. So spousal benefits do not earn delayed credits after full retirement age. So I'm sure people are going to have some questions about spousal benefits. You need to reach out to me and I'll help show you this in a report and explain it a little bit more. But as soon as we're eligible for spousal benefits, we want to take advantage of them because you're not going to see that much larger increase if you wait past your full retirement age to then apply for spousal benefits. Unless the higher earning spouse is delaying themselves, right? And then the younger earning spouse now goes past 66, 67, 68. Now the higher earning spouse is filed. Now that younger spouse can apply for spousal benefits and it all gets adjusted upward, but we don't get much more of a tremendous benefit because we're looking backwards to that higher earning spouse's PIA. Regardless, spousal benefits are a good thing and I'm glad they have it in the program. Now the goal is to coordinate while we're alive, right? And while we're getting ready to plan, coordinate this to try to maximize income for that survivor after one person passes. And it can be a little complicated, but by understanding all of these considerations and doing some calcs, it's possible for married couples to come up with the right decision for their needs. So we're going to look at a couple of strategies. The first thing to look at when we're trying to coordinate spousal benefits is this. Is the lower earning spouse's primary insurance amount more or less than 50% of the higher earning spouse's primary insurance amount? If the lower earning spouse's PIA is more than 50% of the higher earning spouse's PIA, the way to maximize lifetime benefits is for both spouses to wait till 70. That's a max. That's the max. Okay. Just saying, that's the max. Our calculators show that if both spouses have average or longer than average life expectancies, this will maximize benefits for both of them over their lifetimes. Now, mind you, I said average or longer than average life expectancies. If we have illnesses or we have a predisposition, family history where people pass away at younger ages, that that changes the whole dynamic. But if we have that long life expectancy expectation, delaying makes sense. Now, if the lower earning spouse's PIA is less than 50% of the higher earning spouse's PIA, you may want to do this hybrid strategy. And I find this to be pretty popular. Here we want the lower earning spouse to just go ahead and claim early. Okay. And this gets income started soon, starts bringing in some checks. And, when that person turns 62, or stops working, we're going to start claiming. And now we want the higher earning spouse to delay as long as they can. And ideally, right, till age 70, because we want to maximize that higher benefit over both lifetimes, right? So they'll get the benefit of getting that extra income when that higher earning spouse starts filing. And also it tees it up for a good survivor benefit when that higher earning spouse passes. To determine the right strategy, again, remember we said there's over 18,000 different types of combinations that we can get from trying to plan this. It's complicated. There's some rule changes every once in a while. We need to run the numbers, and we can run that for you. And this is where our customized analysis comes into play. And we'll give you a nice report with each scenario highlighted in different colors and show you the break even over your lifetime on how everything works out. It's a great report, whether you're married, single, divorced, etc. And we can help do that for you. All right. Well, Bill, I'm widowed, I'm divorced. How does that impact my Social Security claiming strategy? Well, very interesting question. If you're widowed or divorced, you may be eligible for survivor benefits, divorced spouse survivor benefits, or divorced spouse benefits. That make your head spin? Okay, but by coordinating these benefits with your own record, you may be able to increase your total benefits. But let's look at the basic survivor benefit a spouse would receive, and hopefully after maximizing, the other spouse's benefit. So survivor benefits can be a little bit complicated, and there's more to it than what we're going to show you here. But in a nutshell, it's important to understand how these work because the decisions you make now are going to influence what the survivor gets later on. There are two factors that influence the amount of survivor benefit. The first factor is the age at which the deceased spouse claimed their own retirement benefit. If he or she originally applied for Social Security before full retirement age, then the survivor benefit will be limited to his or her actual benefit or 82.5% of his PIA. So basically it's saying as long as his benefit was greater than 82.5% of his PIA, that's what the survivor is going to get. But if that person claimed really early, they're going to bump it up to at least 82.5% of his PIA for the survivor. Okay. Now, if the deceased applied at full retirement age, then that benefit for the survivor is 100% of that PIA. And if he or she applied at 70, the survivor benefit would include all of those delayed credits. So there's no extra calculation needed to be done there. They're just going to get whatever that person was receiving if they claim later. Now, the second factor is going to be, well, at what age is the survivor claiming the benefit? Because in survivor benefits, the widow or widower can claim as early as age 60 or really as early as age 50 if they're disabled. Okay. Then the survivor benefit will equal at a minimum 71.5% of the decedent's PIA. So if the survivor wants to claim as early as age 60, they won't get the full 100% of what the decedent benefit was calculated. They'll get 71.5% of that benefit. You see how that's reduced, right? But if that survivor waits until their own full retirement age or later, then they would get 100% of that decedent's benefit. Of course, this now takes some calculation, right? Does it make sense to take the survivor benefit for a few years and allow the widow or widower to delay their own benefit down the road, right? We start looking at that math. Maybe I'm going to get the X check and then my check's going to grow bigger and I switch later. That's always an option. So anyway, we just want you to know of these little nuances because there are some hasty claiming that goes on. Sometimes people are rushed into making decisions, or they want to call the Social Security office and they want to say, hey, my husband or wife passed away, and I'm just letting you know, because they feel like they have to do that, when in actuality, you don't have to be notify them because they're going to be notified by the funeral home. And the person on the other end at Social Security says, well, do you want to take your benefit? You might as well. Here it is. I'm going to tell you what it is. And boop, next thing you know, they get a check in the mail. And we're like, whoa, we should have waited. We should have done some calculating. We should have done some thinking. So there's no rush to do that because Social Security will pay in arrears. They will pay up to 6 months in arrears. So we have about a 6-month window to make that decision. And then we can get a retroactive check. And now we know that going forward, we're getting the right amount per our plan. Now, if both spouses are receiving benefits and one spouse dies, then the other spouse can switch to the higher benefit. Here's a hypothetical example. Let's say Joe and Julie are married and they're both at full retirement age. And Joe's getting $3,600 a month and Julie's getting $1,800 a month. And Joe dies. And Julie's $1,800 a month benefit will stop and she starts getting $3,600 a month. Isn't that cool? All right, she gets the higher of the two check, but she also just lost about 40% of her income. All right, so that's something else we got to think about. But one important note about this survivor planning is that you get that loss of the one benefit. You don't get to keep both. You lose one, and it could be up to 2/3 of the amount of income they were receiving. I use 40% as an example, but it's something to think about because we have to make sure that loss of income means that we have to have another way of making up that income, especially if our expense need still stays the same. And most people will say, well, their surviving spouse maybe doesn't need 100% of whatever the monthly expense need was. Maybe it drops down to 90, maybe it drops down to 80. We just don't know. We don't know until we go through a couple of months, right, of living without that spouse to know what's actually changing. Heck, if I know my mother, when my father passes, she's traveling the world, so her expenses are going to go up, and then she's just going to spend it all. And I joke, but she makes that known to us all the time. She's like, hey, I'm not sitting still. We're going to be spending it. I said, okay, let's maximize our benefits, okay, so that we don't have that issue down the road. So let's see what would happen if the deceased spouse had delayed the start of Social Security. So in this example, Joe files for Social Security at 70, and now his benefit is 124% of the PIA. So he's getting $3,600. Actually, no, his PIA was $3,600. He's now getting a benefit of $4,464. So now if he dies, Julie's survivor benefit will be equal to Joe's $4,464. So by Joe delaying, right, Julie got more benefit. And here are some of the rules for survivor benefits. In order for the surviving spouse to receive the survivor benefit, the marriage must have lasted at least 9 months, unless the death is ruled an accident. And I think that comes to whether it was like a train wreck, plane crash, whatever. But you have to be married at least 9 months to apply for survivor benefits. To start the benefits, the survivor must be at least 60 years old or 50 if disabled. However, if that widow or widower applies at full retirement age, the benefit, or before full retirement age, that benefit's going to be reduced, as it is just for regular retirement benefits. And some of the same principles that go into deciding when to apply for regular retirement benefits also apply to survivor benefits. Now, if you remarry after the age of 60, you're not going to be able to receive survivor benefits anymore because it's based on your previous spouse's earning record, unless your remarriage ends. Okay. So it could be where you do that math and you say, if I get remarried before 60, then my spousal benefit will be X, but my survivor benefit's more than the spousal benefit. Do I want to do this? Do maybe I just cohabitate for a while, take the survivor benefit? You know what I mean? So there's a lot of different ways we can claim and make things work, and we always want to try to get the biggest benefit all the way around. But love is love. So if you get remarried, hey, you get remarried, right? And divorced spouse survivor benefits are also available. So this is where we need our divorcees to keep track of their ex-spouses, because as long as they stay unmarried and their prior marriage was at least 10 years or more, they are eligible for a divorced spouse survivor benefit. So when you find out that ex-spouse passes and you're not married, and you're eligible for whatever that person was receiving, okay, as long as your check was lower than what they were getting, you'll get the higher check. And that's very, very good to know and to keep track of. So even if you don't talk to your ex-spouse, make sure you keep in touch with the kids who do talk to that person. Now, a divorced spouse can receive Social Security based on the ex-spouse's work record. Again, providing the marriage lasted at least 10 years and the person receiving benefits remains unmarried. Remember that men can also receive divorced spouse benefits too. And if the divorce occurred more than 2 years ago, then the ex-spouse does not have to file for the benefit. However, he or she must be at least 62 years old. So what that means is before you can get that divorced spouse benefit, that person that you're going to file against has to be at least 62 years old, unless the divorce occurred more than 2 years ago. Now, here are the rules for divorced spouse benefits. More than one ex-spouse can receive benefits on the same worker's record. So if your ex-husband or ex-wife has remarried a couple of times, and each marriage was for 10 years or more, and they all got divorced, all three ex-wives can claim divorced spouse benefits as long as that marriage was 10 years or more, right? They can all claim and get the full benefit for each person. And the benefits paid to one ex-spouse does not affect those paid to the worker. The current spouse, if that person is now remarried again for a fourth time, or any of the other ex-spouses. So you do not need to know your ex-spouse's whereabouts. The Social Security will not even tell the ex-spouse that somebody's filing against their record. They won't even know. You're just going to give Social Security enough identifying information like the divorce decree, your marriage license, divorce decree, etc., just to prove that you were married for up to 10 years and that you are now divorced. You provide that documentation, usually originals. You have to provide them with originals, and then they'll mail them back to you. But remember, if you're receiving divorced spouse benefits and you remarry, your divorced spouse benefits will stop. However, you may be then eligible for spousal benefits on your new husband's work record. And if that new husband, let's say in that example, passes away, and you were married for more, than, well, passes away, right? You'll be eligible for survivor benefits on either the divorced ex-spouse or the new husband. So we got to look at the math and see who had the bigger benefit for you to claim on. It's really, really interesting. So you may be even saying right now, boy, Bill, this is complicated. Maybe a little bit more than I realized. And I understand I didn't realize a lot of this stuff and I'm not really well educated in it. But it is important to get to know how Social Security plays in my own retirement plan. And that brings us back to the brain teaser. You remember this? Uh, we had the phrase called behavioral finance, right? It's the study of the influence of psychology on the behavior of investors. So for our brain teaser question, people would usually say they'd rather be early than delayed for many things in life, and they'd rather get a bonus instead of paying a penalty. And that makes sense, right? But as we've seen in this presentation today, when it comes to Social Security planning, early is to penalty as a delayed is to bonus. And the government didn't set the phrasing up this way intentionally, but it certainly has influenced people who have only seen their claiming choices described as early versus delayed. And we don't normally see the claiming question positioned as one of a penalty versus bonus, but I think you can see the value of framing the question in that manner. I think this little brain teaser is good in the way that it loops back to our original problem. And we're going to review what we've learned and then close with a solution. So here we go. This is what we started with as our core challenge. People are hurting their retirement by making costly decisions about Social Security. And then we went through the 4 insights designed to help us get an understanding of the problem and develop a belief in a solution that might work. In brief, the insights were number 1, Social Security offers inflation protection income for life, including survivor benefits. Number 2, your monthly benefit will be reduced if you claim early. Number 3, couples should always maximize the higher earner's benefit for the surviving spouse. And lastly, number 4, if you're widowed or divorced, you may be eligible for benefits that can increase your check. And so that understanding of the problem then brings us to our solution. And it is that everyone needs a personalized Social Security claiming analysis to understand how and when to apply and how their monthly benefit will fit into their overall retirement income plan. It's important to consider Social Security in the context of your other retirement resources, including pensions, IRAs, and 401ks. Remember the required minimum distributions that are going to happen at age 73 in your overall investment portfolio, in your plans for working. All of these resources need to be coordinated to give you the income that you need for the rest of your life. Now, don't be afraid to ask for help. I mean, retirement planning is easy when it's a matter of stashing part of your salary in a 401k or an IRA. But when the time comes for you to convert that nest egg into an income stream, you're going to want to make sure it doesn't run out. And Social Security may be the bedrock of this retirement income plan, but it must be coordinated with your other resources to give you that stability and security that you deserve. Social Security personnel are very helpful, but they can't make recommendations. It's not their job to do a long-range Social Security plan because they don't know what's going on with the rest of your personal finances. We, however, can help you analyze different claiming strategies, show you your Social Security income stream under different claiming scenarios, and help you take advantage of these innovative strategies designed to help maximize your benefits. Boy, we've covered a lot today, and you probably still have questions. So maybe they're the ones that we posted here on this slide, like when should you apply? What if I keep working? Yada, 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 yada. We want to help you consider each of these questions individually and come up with a plan for your personal situation. Like I said in the beginning of the program, with our Tenzing formula, Social Security planning or any of these other pillars, as we call them, cannot be done in a vacuum. They must be all coordinated together. And I want you to know that we are here for you. At Everest Retirement Planners, we always say, plan first and invest second. And we want to thank you for taking the time to watch this program. There's our number to the office, and there's the email of that beautiful lady standing next to me. Feel free to give her a call, and we'll help you in any way we can. Thanks again, and God bless.